Good evening. We'll now return to open session. I apologize for starting late and keeping you waiting. We have two reportable items from closed session. Item 4A, the personnel summary was approved, and a copy is available at the back of the room. In regards to item 4D, a settlement of $3,347 for TPRS publishing was approved by the board in closed session. Can I get a motion for approval of the agenda, including time limits, please?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Do we have any public comment on the consent agenda? Do any student trustees or trustees here at the table have any items you'd wish to have removed from the consent agenda and include in trustee consideration?
I'm requesting 17E and 17F, please, be removed.
I'd like to request item 17C and G.
Anyone else have any other requests? Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda with items C, E, F, and G removed?
I move we approve the consent agenda with items 17C, E, F, and G removed.
Second, please.
Second it.
All those in favor?
So
Aye.
It's a,
Aye.
it's
Thank
a roll
you.
call, isn't it?
And it's still roll call because of the resolution on there.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that.
Ms.
Oh, wait.
Anderson?
Wait, hold on one
Wait,
moment,
I thought the
please.
resolution was removed,
Oh, it's
though.
removed? Oh, okay.
The,
Yeah, okay.
the grant requirement, wait,
Right, C is the only resolution.
Right.
that's right.
Thank you. So it passed without those. Thank you. We'll move on. One moment. So we're now at the board president report, and actually, I was going to suggest, and I'll wait and see how this superintendent would like to approach this. He and I met earlier this week and decided it might make sense when we do these reports to have the president report. And when he gives his report, what he'll be doing is providing response to the areas that the board asked him to evaluate at the previous meeting. So he's kind of reporting back to the board in public the resolution to any of the items that we asked him to look into or any actions taken. So I'll leave it up to you, Superintendent, if you'd like to do that right after my report or wait until the end after the trustees' trustee reports. So for the board president report, there's two main topics I want to address. But the first is what I think we all know has been on the minds of everyone on this campus. This last Wednesday, I went to the site council meeting at TAM, and there were two students at the council meeting, and it was very clear that they were very concerned, and there was concern that favorite teachers were going to be laid off, that they asked if we were going to still have a science program next year, what was going to happen with the trainers, definite anxiety. And they asked if I could get a message out to the students, and the part that was most upsetting was that one student said, I realize we're at the kind of the bottom of the list, but we're not finding out anything. And so with that, and I'm looking forward to following up with the student trustees to work out a communication plan. We're going to try and get a message out to all students tomorrow saying that we'll be following up with more and working with you, and we will make that happen. As a result of that, the clerk and I, Chuck Ford, visited Drake's leadership class and met with them yesterday and answered questions. And the questions were all along the same lines. Today at Redwood we did the same, but this time we did a little bit of an experiment. We didn't answer questions as they asked them. We wanted to just say, tell us all your questions, and we'll answer them at the end. And the questions there's clearly a lot of confusion. So both Drake and, actually all three, Tam, Drake, and Redwood asked, please come back. We want you to come back. And so I want to bring this up to the full board that we'll put together a schedule, and we'll have board members routinely visiting these the students and the campuses, and working together with the student trustees. I think we can really not only get the message out, but one question that our follow-up is going to be on Thursday is, if you had to save costs, what would you cut? What would you remove or trim, to hear from the students? Because this is your school. So I do want to say one more time that we're not in a state of emergency. We have a reserve. We're fortunate that we've always had very good management of our budget, and boards before our time and superintendents before our superintendent watched the budget closely, and the budget reserve was there for an emergency. And it was also there to afford us time to deal with taking cost-cutting measures when we got to the point of knowing that it was time to do that. The district has always known there was going to be a increase in enrollment. It happened in this case. We thought it would maybe be a little bit later, but we were ready for it. We thought it might be a year later, but it came a year earlier. But it gives us plenty of time to thoughtfully look at the programs and honor that process. So we can do that. The board has not made any decisions for any layoffs. We have not decided on any program cuts. And this is the work that the LCAP committee will do, looking at our goals, and come back working with our facilitators. Dr. Yoshihara and Topie are facilitating that effort. And we'll come back to the board, and we will work on this together. And again, the $3 million is a target. We were pretty clear about that. That's in the resolution, for the very reason that until you dig in and look at the timing, you're not going to know what really is realistic, so that we're not trying to change course or correct course too quickly. So we are going to honor the process, and very, very appreciative of everyone on that LCAP committee. And I know there's some people in this room on that committee. It's a lot of hard work. And I also want to thank, we've been getting some emails, well, not just some emails, we've been getting a lot of emails, but the ones I'm referring to when I say some, in response to the district-wide, community-wide email that went out last Friday, we've been getting some nice emails saying, thank you. Now we understand, can we donate to the foundation? Hey, I'm here to help with the parcel tax. So that's what our community is made of, and I'm very appreciative, as I know all the board members are. So we just need to work through this together. The other thing I want to read to you, it's actually a statement. Part of it was sent to all the employees last Friday, and I think it's just very important, and there'll be a follow-up message from the superintendent. So you have to excuse me, I want to read this so that I'm sure I cover everything. But if you especially were at the last meeting, multiple teachers and 3 students have addressed the Board of Trustees about alleged sexual harassment on our school campuses. The board is very concerned by these serious allegations. Board Policy 4119, period 11, was updated and approved by the board on November 14th, 2017. This policy states that the Board of Trustees prohibits sexual harassment of district employees. The board also prohibits retaliatory behavior or action against district employees or other persons who complain, testify, or otherwise participate in the complaint process established pursuant to this policy and a company regulation. We care about both our students and our employees' welfare, and we expect to have a community where all students and staff feel safe, connected, and valued. It's the district's employees who have made and continue to make our district exemplary. The district has engaged in an outside investigator experienced in examining instances of discrimination and harassment in the workplace. As many of you are aware, last month the district appointed an additional Title IX officer, Dr. Topier. This will help streamline and make sure that we can respond to any kind of alleged complaint quickly. The district's also developing a survey. Lars Christensen is working diligently on that to evaluate the nature and extent of the issue. Tonight, the superintendent as well as Dr. Topier are going to provide you an update of the sexual harassment training that's being developed for the students in the district. The board is determined to take whatever steps are necessary to provide a safe and nurturing environment for both our staff and students. And we'll continue to keep you posted. So thank you very much. And so I think what we'll do is start with the student trustee reports, and then we'll go through with the adult trustees.
Okay, so Drake participated in the nationwide, I think, walkout to support gun regulations. It was pouring rain during the walkout, and yet there was still an incredible turnout, and everyone stayed for the full 17 minutes and were really respectful. And a bunch of students came up and spoke. We had microphone and speakers, and then one of the alumni of the school where the shooting was came and spoke. And on the whole, I think it was a really good experience, and everyone was very respectful, and the administration handled it very well. This week at Drake is Nicotine Awareness Week because of the recent rise of juuling, which is intaking nicotine through sort of electronic cigarettes, for those who don't know, has become a lot more prevalent at Drake. So we had an awareness week this week to try to combat that. Peer Resource set up booths and tried to educate people about the harmful impact of inhaling nicotine. We also had the first round of our SBAC testing. And then we held our ASB elections, and I've gotten the results for those. We have recently really tried to update our ASB elections so that we have large voter turnout and then also as many students running as possible. So this year we've had the most students running that we've ever had. Wow. And we changed the voting to paper instead of online, and we had it during advisory, or we call it crew now, so that all students had to vote. And we showed on Pirate TV a couple weeks before the vote a speech from all of the candidates, and then we showed that Pirate TV again while people voted, so they knew exactly who they were voting for and what policies that person was going to bring to the table. And I think this year it's actually made a lot of people excited about the elections, and then who won was announced over the speaker, and everyone was very passionate about if they were happy about the outcome or not. So I think that's moving forward to a lot more school participation with ASB elections.
That's great. So how many did you have that ran for the office?
I'm not sure the exact number. There's 3 for a leadership president, and we split the vice president into 2 different positions because we have 2 vice presidents, and they usually, last year and all previous years, they decided which sort of duties they would cover, but this year we really we changed we've been updating the Constitution in Student Senate to make it more the language actually reflect what we do. So then we made one vice president, the more Student Senate vice president, who more runs the government stuff and is in charge of Student Senate, and then the other one be more the leadership vice president who works a bit more with the event planning. Mm-hmm. But then they both just assist the president. So I think we had 2 people running for the ASB vice president, and then we had a couple people running for treasury and a couple people running for all the class presidents.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Team left this morning for their annual Joshua Tree trip, and it's going to be 1.5 weeks, and they're going to do lots of rock climbing, and the weather is looking great. That's good. The Pathway Student Lotteries is happening for next year's class this Thursday, and there's 24 seats, and they're trying really hard to make it more diverse, a diverse group of people. So that's great. Independent Study is working, or a yearbook. The yearbook group and everyone is working really hard to submit the yearbook before the beginning of spring break. And CEC has welcomed 3 new students, and 2 have graduated. That's great.
Thank you very much, Fatima.
All right, so this week and last week, Sondheim was available for all the students if they wanted to come and ask him questions regarding safety, so I think that was a good opportunity for the student body. Allison Schwartz was named to the 2018 California All-State Honor Band as a clarinetist. Yep. We had the walkout as well, and it went super well. It was pouring rain, but we all got out there. Mr. Sondheim and our athletic director, Jessica Peisch, have been visiting one varsity practice for each team during each season and playing with them. And supposedly they just got whooped by the boys' tennis team. And the CASP, next week is our CASPER SBAC testing, state testing. Our AP capstone and AP research students have been doing their final presentations for the year. And yeah, that's what's been going on.
Thank you. Jacob.
Okay, so this past week our juniors did our SBAC testing, and we're really proud that most of them showed up, and it was almost all of the juniors showed up for SBAC testing, which has been a problem for us in the past. We're really proud that it was not a problem this year. We also believe that most of them tried their hardest. There were not a bunch of random answered, so congratulations to the class of 019. Also, we have our spring sports rally this Friday. It was going to be 2 Fridays ago, but because of the rain, we pushed it back to this Friday, which is going to be very sunny. In the past 2 weeks, we had a walkout in honor or in memorial of the Parkland shooting, and this was just a 17-minute walkout in honor of the 17 victims of the shooting. And right afterwards, almost every student went back to class because the walkout was not an excuse for kids to miss school. It was rather a way for us to show our support of the families and to show that something needs to be done about the gun epidemic that is happening. We have also been trying to keep the Parkland shooting in students' mind, because we don't want this to be a thing that starts and then immediately dwindles away as the next test occurs. So the Students Against Gun Violence Club has been active at our campus, and kind of in light of that, but we also had it planned. We had our blood drive, so hopefully the blood that children donated will help victims. Also, we had a voter registration table at the blood drive, so that way kids can pre-register to vote if they're 16 or register to vote if they're 18. So that way kids will be able to actively have their voices heard. And I think that's all that's going on at TAM. Spring sports are in full-fledged, doing great. And we had our Unity Day last Friday, where we had an hour-long lunch and food trucks arrived. Most of the TAM community stayed on campus, so we really got to see how many kids there truly are at our school, and they all interacted, whether it was just waiting in line for the food truck or doing some of the fun activities we had planned. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob.
Jacob, I have a question. How many blood drives do you have?
I know,
at
just
TAM?
look, yeah.
It seems like you have such generous donors at TAM.
This year it's only been 2. We were planning to have a third one, but it got canceled because of scheduling, like on their part.
I know you had one at Halloween, which I thought was
Yeah.
also timely. Seems like you've had more than 2, but
It's because we were gonna also have a Valentine's Day blood drive, but then the Valentine's Day blood drive didn't get on their calendar. There was some calendar mix-up, so we did not have a Valentine's Day blood drive.
it's a good effort. Thank you.
Miss Anderson,
Oh, we're up, okay. We didn't.
you've been out of town, so you're not going to talk as
Yeah,
long tonight.
No, I know, you're disappointed. I went to the TAM open house. I also attended the walkout. Was taking care of 3 dogs that day, so I had them all in the car and came to Redwood and just tried to blend in because it was a student-led event, and I was so impressed with the student body and in general, just the student leadership that we're seeing happening in the district and nationwide, I think is inspiring for all of us. Fiscal Advisory and LCAP Committee is meeting tomorrow night, and we all know that will be a big meeting. Golden Bell, I think I try to say this every time, May 24th, right, Lars? And, yeah, if we could all try to attend that, that would be great. And we're meeting with the political strategist tomorrow, I believe.
Tomorrow.
Yes, 4 o'clock. That's it for me.
I attended the Tamascal open house, and Tamascal open house always has the best food among all the open houses, I have to say. What? And the TAM open house, where that's where I challenged Jacob to lie down on a bed of nails after I also lay down on a bed of nails. And I just, so you know, I posted the picture of me lying down on the bed of nails on my, I don't do a lot of Facebook, but I posted it on Facebook, and that by far, the number of likes that I got to my photo being on a bed of nails was far surpassed anything I had previously posted, which is a little concerning.
Jake surrendered to peer group pressure.
Jake had no qualms about it at all. I was surprised, but there was a lot of pressure in the classroom. But it was actually great. The whole physics classroom was very interesting. I attended class presentations in John Weller's social studies class about designing high schools, which was very interesting. And I met with and I spent a little time with the TAM, some representatives of the TAM Foundation Board, who are showing a lot of enthusiasm for rallying the community on behalf of the parcel tax, which I thought was very encouraging. There you go.
Thank you.
Okay. I too.
Oh, sorry, one more thing.
Yes.
Maddie didn't mention, but I believe that Drake won the Northern California, the mountain bike team won the championship for Drake High School, which is I think the second year in a row. So,
Amazing.
So that was actually pretty impressive. That was in the IJ, actually.
And Jacob, you didn't mention mock trial,
I was
but
about to say,
Oh, yeah.
the mock trial team won their state competition, and they're going to nationals later this year. We're all very proud of them.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. I too attended one of John Weller's classes presentations on their designing a school. Very interesting, particularly in light of where we all are these days. I also attended the TAM open house, and I got there early enough so I could see things. When you're this short, you can't see much. And I was so delighted, as I always am, to see the student exhibitions, the work, and the work that I saw everywhere going on by everyone, both the students, of course, and the staff. It's so very encouraging to see that no matter what goes on, we do have a place to come and develop ourselves as individuals and grow as creative and intellectual people. It was very rewarding, as it always is. I'm sure I missed a few things, but I did attend the tax base forum this morning at the county office, and you probably don't know this and you may not care, but the TAM district started working with the assessor's office and the tax, I'm losing my train of thought here already, but we've been working with them to understand how taxes are collected, how they're dispersed. Very complicated. But this district has been working directly with that office for years and years. So it was an opportunity to renew that relationship, at least for me, and I think we got some very good information particular to our district as we face, if we pass the parcel tax, how those revenues will actually get into our balance, fund balance. So thank you.
Thank you. So like you, I attended the San Andreas open house and the TAM open house. The San Andreas open house is always something unique always happens, and Corey put on quite a good exercise, for the parents that, was pretty impressive, and to see more engagement in that school was what I've noticed over the last few years. At the TAM open house, a lot of parents were commenting just how happy they are with the teachers and the overall programs. I also met with the TAM Foundation and was happy with how much they wanted to provide really valuable input too, especially since Mill Valley recently went through a parcel tax measure. And there's various parents that are willing to, give us advice and, help out however they can. And as I mentioned earlier, going to the site council at TAM and then the leadership classes at Drake and Redwood will be launching many more of those. And Jacob will be following up with you as well. We're trying to work on some communication with the student trustees and the board. They did suggest we go on Hawk News and go on TV and all sorts of things. So they were pretty. They suggested Instagram. They were very, very helpful. I also attended the tax forum today, and you'll be hearing more about that from Dr. Yoshihara, but it was a very interesting day as we, look forward to our, parcel taxes and looking at how they estimate what our property taxes will be. I don't know that I'll do this now, but at some point I am going to summarize. I counted, there was about 20 questions from the Redwood students, and they echoed the ones we got from Drake. But I think it'll help us when we, go out and try and make sure we address the confusion. So that's all I have. So I'll hand it to Chuck. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I was looking at the calendar here. Went to Drake leadership and Redwood leadership with Leslie. I would add we ran into Chris Knudsen coming out. They were just doing SBAC testing that day. He was in a very good mood because the new Chromebooks that they're using have enough battery life that they can do the entire SBAC, and it has taken a huge amount of stress, off of Chris, but I imagine all the other IT people at the three campuses. So finally, our hardware has caught up with our needs in that respect. I remember at Tamascal getting that stuff wired up and everything was just a nightmare for Bruce Garrido. So that's nice. I will comment that at the Drake meeting, it seemed like there was like an opening of a dam that on the part of a lot of the students had a lot of things to say, a lot of suggestions and a lot of observations about some of the classes and some of the curriculum, which I think it's subject for discussion at a later date at another time. And San Andreas. And Leslie's talked about that. On Friday, there is the Adams family, Friday and Saturday nights, Adams family at Sir Francis Drake High
really?
School.
I didn't know that.
So
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Yoshihara.
Okay, a couple updates from the last meeting I'd like to follow up on. The first one has to do with the variance in the what we would call the unrestricted budget for books and supplies as it relates to prior year trends. There were some questions as it relates to this, and we've been able to follow up. So we made an adjustment based on new information we found in looking at that. We estimate that those adjustments will amount to about $580,000. As such, we plan to have this count, I used the word count, towards the $3 million budget reductions for the target for the next fiscal year. In addition, we do have about $400,000 of what we consider one-time cost in the budget for the current year that isn't included in the out years. That was actually in place at the second interim. We believe that these two amounts, the 580 and the 400, account largely for the $1 million increase from the current over the past fiscal year. The next item I want to talk about is the parcel tax conversation. In communication with Roy Given, who you've heard Trustee Owens and Lundgren talk about, he's the county treasurer collector and has been so for 27 or so years. He had spent a fair amount of time looking and going over our questions as it relates for a November parcel tax. He did share the challenges with essentially collecting revenue in the same fiscal year for a parcel tax, should it go in November. Getting into quite a bit of detail as it relates to that. He acknowledged that we have 35,000 plus parcels, and that is an undertaking they have never done. He does, however, understand our situation and wants to work with us. So I think it's fair to say we'll continue to dialogue with him as we move towards this consideration of a November parcel tax and some ideas he may have to see if there's a way we can count the revenue in the current fiscal year. So I don't want to put him in an uncomfortable spot. He certainly understands the need of us, our district, but also at the same time is trying to educate us with regards to what that entails. And so I know the group working with our consultant will also be involved in this as we move along towards that conversation for the parcel tax. The next one I want to talk about relates to the conversation around the contributions from the wellness staff and the wellness program. There were some questions around those monies received. We did check and verify that we have received funds in 16-17, so last fiscal year, from both Drake and Redwood High School. They did contribute. At the time, we advised TAM that we did not need any funds because they didn't have any staff last fiscal year. So that made sense. We are looking in the current fiscal year in regards to the invoicing for TAM High School. We also got clarification from Redwood and Drake that the contributions they make, at least their understanding from the foundations, was that that was a one-year commitment from them. So we made no attempt to invoice them for the current year. That was the understanding in working with Dr. Topier and the wellness staff. So we'll keep you updated, but that's where we are with that. Regarding the attendance verification audit, there's some questions around a desire to audit essentially all students within our district. I do want to say we're continuing this research. We're making good progress as we communicate with our sites on this matter. So I'll have an update for the board at a future meeting with regards to that. And the last one I want to share with regards to all the feedback we received as it relates to the work we're doing around the budget and the fiscal impact. We appreciate that. We have provided on the home page what we're calling a community input form. So anybody who wants to provide feedback, ideas, can come to our home page and provide that feedback to us. Anonymously or not, there's a place where it's optional, and all of that information will get to the LCAP Fiscal Advisory Group. So those are some of the follow-up items I have. I'll continue to follow up at the next meeting as I learn more. So
Very good. Thank you. That was very helpful. Any board members have questions or student trustees have questions? No? Okay. So this, we'll move on. You're on again to talk about board communications. Thank you.
Some of these are consolidated, but they're all available online. What we have is an email from Mary Jane Burke, County Superintendent, dated March 20th, regarding LCAP Fiscal Advisory Committee questions. Email from Mr. Oppenheim, parent, dated March 9th, regarding spending. Again, these are put together, but we certainly have looked and read all through these. There are 8 emails from various constituents regarding athletic trainers, 11 emails from various constituents regarding what we call budget cuts, 11 emails from various constituents regarding library positions, and then 42 emails from various constituents regarding the wellness center position and/or wellness program. A letter from Mary Jane Burke, County Superintendent, dated March, it just says March, regarding the Youth Leadership Summit. And then lastly, there's a monthly enrollment comparison dated March 22nd.
And I do want to clarify that we've been working very closely. We usually have a deadline for a Wednesday before we put any communication in the board packet. And we received volumes of emails that aren't reflected here, but they did go to the LCAP because there was no way to respond to all of them. But those emails that have anything to do with the budget issue has been forwarded to the LCAP committee. I want to assure you of that. We're also considering that when we, depending on the nature of the email, there'll be times that we go ahead and get them in the packet so that people see what the board gets, and then we do a follow-up response. But we're going to do that on a case by case. So we're working on how to address that. So I just want to assure you that nothing's been lost. So thank you.
Leslie, I just want to jump in and thank you publicly for responding on behalf of the board. I think we have 350 emails or so that we've received, which is a ginormous pile, and you've been doing it diligently, and so thank you.
No,
One
my
trustee.
pleasure. No, it's important. Michael just looked at me when I said my pleasure, like his eyes darted up, because it does take a lot of time. But it's definitely important, and the board, we really appreciate that so many people have taken the time to write to us and express your concerns. It's very important. That's part of the government process, and that's what we love about this community. So we are working on a way to respond quicker. And thank you. I've gotten a few phone calls from people noting that I hadn't responded, and it was that it got lower in the list, and I really do appreciate those calls too. So thank you.
I have one more question on board communications, and it's in relation to the monthly enrollment comparison. And I'm wondering, Superintendent Yoshihara, if you could, Mary, can you pull that up? I'm wondering if we can take a look at the numbers and if we can guess where we might be for each school, if we have a projection for next year. I know it's kind of a moving target, but I like to think about enrollment as we deal with our budget situation. Like at TAM, we're at 1573 now. We think it's going to go up.
Sure. I'll invite Dr. Topier and or Lars to they are working closely with our sites as it relates to scheduling. As you know, and as our students know, they're in the midst of selecting their choices for next year. So we have rough numbers. So I don't know if Dr. Topier wants to add any background as it relates to how we're planning on staffing and what numbers we're using for next year.
So the numbers we're using for next year is a combination of statistics we use over the past couple of years. That's something called a cohort survival rate. So what we do is we take all of the 8th graders in public school, that feed. So for example, for Redwood, we would take all of the current 8th graders, so for last year, how many 8th graders were there? How many of them became 9th graders? What was that rate of survival, so to speak? So if 96% of the current, 8th grade students were to come into the freshman year, then that would be a 98% cohort survival rate. So we take that data over usually a 3-year trend and take an average. We look at the number of current 8th graders in public school, and we estimate that to be our incoming 9th grade class. Some years we have more than 100% because we take kids in from privates, but a 3-year trend gives us a pretty good idea of where we're going to land. And so we are using that trend data rather than, so right now we have far more pre-registered 9th graders at Redwood than we believe will show up.
Right.
So we're not using that number that's actually in there as a registered number, but we're using our projected enrollment.
Do we, and I'm sorry I didn't ask you this question in advance, but And we have a meeting next week, so maybe that's, we can have projections for next year, just like, it'd be nice to have a ballpark. Like, we're at 4782 now.
Yeah, we do have those. I mean, I think we've looked at projections a couple of times. We're anticipated to go up about 300 students next year.
Still
So
looking like-
next year is our last, like, big, it's about a 6% increase is what we're anticipating. And that's our last big year of increase in enrollment, would be next year's enrollment numbers.
And that's still, I know we've looked at the numbers, I know that we've had registration happen already, and I was just curious if it looks like we're pretty much on target with what we were projecting, or?
Yeah, I mean, right now, it's really hard to tell from, like, the ninth graders who normally sort of drop out and go to private, they usually enroll with us and then pull out. So we're not quite at that date yet. Usually by April 15th, we have a cleaner look.
Okay.
So we can certainly have, I think, a much closer estimation of next year's enrollment by the second April meeting, for sure. But we can give you something for next year, too. And we usually, like I said, our projections over the last 2 years have been really close.
I think it's like within 1 or 2%, been pretty
very close.
solid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you say that 96% did or did not include the private school students?
That was just an example.
Okay.
So if in the past, we have had years where we were over 100%.
Yeah.
Right. Last year was not one of those years.
Okay.
But so that was
But typically, it's pretty close to 100%.
pretty close.
One
Usually,
way or another.
we're
So
between
you
96
you take
and
that number and you're pretty close to the money.
It's a pretty stable population.
Yeah.
Lars looks like he's chomping at the bit.
Actually, you and Tara at the exchange just really answered. I think it's important to note that the work begun by Cooperative Strategies a couple of years ago during the Facilities Master Plan process,
Right,
Tara's
remember that.
ongoing work with the numbers, again, there is a bit of a variance, but it's 1 to 2%. They're
they did
pretty
a
much
good
spot
job.
on. So while the news isn't good that we continue to grow, because obviously cost comes with that, but there are no surprises. I mean, everything is progressing as was predicted a couple of years ago.
Okay. I just wanted to get that confirmation. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions about board communications before we go to public comment? Are we all good? Okay, now's the time for public comment, and I'm going to read a statement before we get started. The board recognizes the value of public comment on educational issues and provides this time for members of the audience to address the board on any school-related matter not on this agenda. The board can take no action at this time. Each speaker is requested to identify themselves prior to addressing the board and will be heard for up to 3 minutes. The presiding officer of the board shall determine, based on time constraints of the board, whether some time less than 3 minutes shall be allocated to individual speakers. So we have it, the timer says 2 minutes, but I don't think we have too many speakers, so we can let you move on to 3 if you go past the 2. And I can do this a number of ways. Thank you for those of you that filled out one of these yellow forms. It just helps with our record keeping on the minutes. If anyone else wishes to speak and you didn't fill one of these out, stand right up and still address the board. I think what I will do, I will call your name if that's okay with you. So why don't I start with Sarah Fry from College of Marin. Thank you. That would be fine, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening. We're librarians from College of Marin. I'm Dave Patterson.
And I'm Sarah Fry.
And we've come here tonight to ask you to safeguard the integrity of your libraries and to keep your librarians. Librarians and educators throughout Marin County are concerned about TAM district's libraries.
We brought with us tonight a letter from the American Library Association, signed by the ALA President James Neal and the American Association of School Librarians President Stephen Yates.
And here's the letter. Dear Superintendent Yoshihara, President Harlander, and board members, Since 1925, TAM district librarians have empowered students with access to information and the skills to harness that information for personal and academic growth. Nearly 100 years later, the urgency of that role has only increased as TAM students confront a vast and constantly shifting world of information that requires skillful navigation in order to achieve success in school, the workplace, and society. And so we were dismayed to learn that TAM High School District proposes to eliminate this critical resource for students.
As presidents of the American Library Association and the American Association of School Librarians, we have reviewed years of research and visited scores of school libraries to see what works firsthand. Consider a 2012 Pew Research Center study in which 83% of teachers responded that students are overwhelmed by the amount of information available online, and 60% stated that the increasing array of technologies makes it more difficult to locate credible information. That second finding was echoed in a recent Stanford University study that found nearly 80% of high school students struggle to verify the credibility of a source.
Yet there's also good news. More than 60 studies from across the country show that student achievement is higher, from grades to reading scores, and from digital proficiency to graduation rates in schools with a professionally staffed library. In a study of California school libraries, Douglas Acherman's research yielded similar findings for California students. Furthermore, he found that these positive outcomes were consistent regardless of students' socioeconomic status.
California's Model School Library Standards establish a vision for school libraries that are designed to help students prepare for success in the hyper-competitive global economy that is powered by information and knowledge. In addition to the learning standards, staffing recommendations were developed to ensure access to library programs. Without the expert direction of a certified school librarian, these standards cannot be met.
The proposal to eliminate school librarians is in direct conflict with TAM High School District's local control accountability plan, particularly its goals to improve achievement across all learning groups and to increase eligibility and preparedness for the University of California system. Your school librarians are key partners in reaching these goals.
We are not alone in this position. A 2010 resolution by the Librarians Association of the University of California states, "The Librarians Association of the University of California expresses its deep concern and opposition to laying off school librarians in all California school districts, and affirms the great value of school librarians and up-to-date, professionally managed school libraries for the preparation of California students for information researching in higher education institutions and for informed participation in a democratic society." Similarly, California's Parent-Teacher Association recently affirmed that every school library media center should be staffed by a qualified, credentialed professional.
Last paragraph. We applaud the TAM Union High School District's stated commitment to developing students who are prepared for, quote, engaged citizenship and able to contribute individually and collaboratively in order to address the challenges of a dynamic and diverse world, end quote. We urge you to retain your school librarians so that TAM High School District students have the resources they need to realize that vision.
Last thing, sincerely, James Neal, President of the American Library Association, and Stephen Yates, President of the American Association of School Librarians.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Is it possible, Leslie, to get a copy of that letter? Could we ask him?
Did you email that to me? Your name sounds familiar. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I thought so. I thought so.
I was scrolling
But you want a
through
hard
it.
copy too?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that is actually pleasant. Thank you. This is very nice.
There have been so many emails, I couldn't remember if I had this one. I would love a hard copy. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
So Melissa Bowman.
Just to clarify, do I get 2 minutes or 3 minutes?
You get 3 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. So you'll hear it go off, and you'll have another minute after that. It's fine. This is new for us, so we're okay, Mary.
Okay.
Why does it say bomb timer on there?
Does it say that? The radiation symbol.
Good evening. My name is Melissa Bowman. I am the teacher librarian at Tamalpais High School. I wish to make sure that you're aware that California Senate Bill 390 passed the California Senate and the California Assembly, which would have required districts to implement the model school library standards, including in terms of appropriate staffing. It's unfortunate that Governor Brown did not sign the bill into action. It's my impression that he did not realize that the state of California ranks 50th in terms of providing school library services to its students. And though he believes that county offices of education and school districts should address this in their plans, all too often they do not. In contrast, at Tamalpais Union High School District, we are actually close to meeting the model school library standards. If we were able to improve our ratio of one librarian to 1,600 students to one librarian to 785 students, we would be able to meet the standards in all 4 areas of staffing. Access, teacher librarian responsibilities, and resources. However, removal of the teacher librarians means that the district cannot meet these standards in 3 of the 4 areas. A library must be staffed by a team of certified teacher librarian and classified staff. Only a teacher librarian can perform the teacher librarian responsibilities, and only a teacher librarian may select library resources. This is per the California Administrator's Assignment Manual. The Model School Library Standards, signed by Michael Kirst, President of the State Board of Education, and State Superintendent Tom Torlickson, are under Priority 2 of the Local Control Accountability Plan. Support for the implementation of the Model School Library Standards includes the California School Library Association, California Teachers Association, California Federation of Teachers, and Long Beach Unified School District. Both California Senator Mike McGuire and Assemblyman Mark Levine voted in favor of putting the standards in effect. As you prioritize the budget for next year, please consider the following. School librarians are linked to improved standardized reading test scores. This has been proven by studies over the last 2 decades, both in Colorado and nationwide. And this increase in scores exists regardless of student poverty level or overall staffing losses. In a Colorado study, the presence of school librarians positively impacted students' standardized reading scores, even when controlling for student poverty, free and reduced cost meal status. So please consider these factors as you prioritize your budget recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other public comment? Thank you.
Thank you.
If you could state your name, thank you.
Hi, my name is Joe Price. I am a parent of a sophomore in TAM and the treasurer of the PTSA. First of all, I want to thank you guys for your efforts and work. It takes a lot of patience and diligence and care to do what you do. I'm relatively new at this, and I didn't like the election results last time around, so I thought I'd get involved. My dad was a teacher, so I come from a line of people where this stuff is really important. My background is finance, and I have some questions. I was looking at the 2016 study going forward, and one of its suggestions was that there be a model to look forward to project enrollment for 10 years. As I've gone through all the numbers for the through the interim report that came out in January and some other studies, I don't see any projections beyond 2021. And I'm afraid that planning for 3 years is not going to solve the problem of long-term planning and growth. I think that's kind of how we got here. The second item is I have had some difficulty finding what I think are the forecasts that you rely on for figuring out what enrollment would be. There's one set in the 2016 study. There's another set in the 2018 budget. There's a third set of not the actual numbers, but the forecasting numbers in the interim report that's been that was done in January, and I would expect there might be yet another set in the second interim report. So I'm not finding a set of numbers that it seems like you guys agree on, and that was a question earlier this evening. And it seems like a lot hinges on that. So there are those conflicts. Is the second interim report out? And is it possible to get that?
It's on the website, right? Yeah, or we can make sure you get it.
I couldn't find it this afternoon.
Okay. We will, I'm writing your questions down, and when you're done, we'll follow up a way to get you all this information. But
all right, and then following up last week's, this is my last comment, meeting or 2 weeks ago at TAM, we had a lot of concern from people that the letters and questions and things that we were going to write would get here and become part of the public record. I was a little dismayed to hear that there were 350 emails. They're not here. I didn't quite understand how you intend to follow up with that, or how people will understand that there have been that many letters. Because if you go on the website right now, it looks like there are 7 letters. Now, when you open up each one, it's a compilation of, 5 or 6 or 7. But it doesn't, the website does not give you the impression that there are a lot of very upset people writing letters.
I'm chomping at the bit. I wish I could engage in a conversation. I want to explain why I can't first, so you'll understand that part of the process. Because this is you're talking about something that's not on the agenda. That means not only can the board not take action, but we'd be violating the law if we started to engage in conversation with you. It's the Brown Act, and it's the ability so that anyone in the public can look at an agenda item and be assured that they won't miss a discussion on an item they're interested in. So that's why I'm not jumping in right now, and neither are the rest of the board members. But all of your questions, I understand. They're very clear. I can understand why there's confusion, and we will get you the answers to those questions. And I did respond to your email and say if you'd like to have coffee. Sometimes this is easier to do in person.
I appreciate that.
And we could do that because, to be honest, about 3 years ago when I started coming to board meetings, I had many of these same questions, and there definitely are answers for you. I can't promise to get this to you within the week,
That's okay.
but we will. And I don't think I'd be violating the Brown Act to talk about the one part of the public record, because I did mention that during the beginning, is that these will be posted on all future, anything that comes to the full board, actually to 3 or more of the board, since it's a quorum, will be posted. And the intent is so that the public sees what we see, so that if we get influenced to take a vote, it's not for purposes of tallying necessarily, but your point is well taken, and we'll look at that. So thank you, and I do still mean that offer. You have my email, I have yours, so thank you. Any other public comment? Okay. Student trustees, anything before we move on? No? Thank you. Okay. Okay, so Tara Topier, you're going to report on goals, teaching and learning and equity, access, and student wellness. And actually, it doesn't look like Tara is coming. It looks like Dr. Yoshihara is coming.
But Dr. Topier is involved and is happy to follow up with regards to this. I think it was important for me to be able to respond to this as the district leads this work, this important work on the update of the sexual harassment training and education, as it says there. Some of this I'll try to read because it's important that I cover everything as outlined so to not miss anything. So essentially, in response to the staff concerns around the prevalence of the sexual harassment on our campuses and in our classrooms, the district has made changes that include adding an additional Title IX coordinator, as you guys have mentioned, Dr. Topier, in addition to Wes Cedros, to ensure timely response to complaints. We have a streamlined process for reporting harassment and or discrimination now via a link on our district website. We also have additional in-person training on the prevention of sexual harassment for our administrators and the creation of a sexual harassment prevention learning module for all students. This learning module was developed in collaboration with Wellness, Educational Services, and the District Social Studies Department. Some members of the District Social Studies Department has previewed this module back on March 12th and provided feedback to the writing team, who believe it is now ready to be launched. The module will be implemented between April 23rd and June 1st, and all students in grades 9 through 11 will be required to participate. Students in grade 12 will participate in a similar module with an emphasis on affirmative consent. Again, the idea here is that these are our seniors, some of who will become of age. The modules will be taught at most sites by the Social Studies Department, although sites do have some discretion as long as all students participate. Any teacher who will be tasked with implementing this sexual harassment prevention module will have an opportunity to preview the material and engage in a training session on April 19th from 4 to 6 in this room, Krebs. The student sexual harassment prevention training that will be implemented will occur, again, between April 23rd and June 1st, but also annually thereafter. Additionally, I do want to say the district is actively working with the sites to ensure that information about discrimination is prominently posted at each site as required. We remain committed to having a safe and engaging learning environment for our students and our staff. And lastly, I do want to thank Dr. Topier, Wes Cedros, Wellness, her department, and Social Studies, and all the others who've been involved in this process. They've committed a tremendous amount of time and resources, rightly so, on this important issue. So that's the statement I have on the update. We do try to keep it short, but I'm happy to answer a question and defer to Dr. Topier for follow-up.
Any questions? Go ahead.
I have two questions. The first one is, what are the workshop or presentations with the students? Could you give a brief summary about what that's going to be like? And then also, I'm just curious about what the process is that the administration takes after a sexual harassment claim is reported.
Okay. Dr. Topier and Flores.
So the sexual harassment prevention learning module for students is, well, we think about 90 minutes. It could be longer, but it's a pretty comprehensive overview specifically of sexual harassment. It also acknowledges and gives definitions of other types of sexual misconduct, as it's legally termed. But this workshop will focus specifically on sexual harassment. It will focus in on the two main types, quid pro quo, which I have a hard time saying, and hostile environment. And then within hostile environment, very specifically sort of drilling down into verbal harassment, visual harassment, and physical harassment. And there's also an aspect of social media and electronic harassment, so to speak, which is kind of embedded in the visual. We worked really hard to make it a very interactive workshop for teens, while also being as informative as possible. It also includes consequences in the law and what goes into that, and various types of dynamics, and it also includes Title IX information, how to respond, how to file a complaint, and and also where you can seek help and support. So all of that's sort of in the module. And so that's to follow up your second question, is how do we respond? We usually a site administrator will get the first complaint, or somehow, unless it comes directly to the Title IX coordinators, which it can. So the first thing we do is, if it's not an anonymous complaint, we make contact to ensure the safety of the student, to interview the student, determine what type of complaint it is, and if it is indeed a sexual harassment Title IX complaint, then there's a certain set of protocols that you go through. Also ensure that student has support services available to them.
Jacob.
Sorry, one other question. Last year, when I was in 11th grade, we had like a consent workshop, which was like that 90-minute period, and it was like, this is how you get consent, and this is like, and it touched on what sexual harassment is. Is this new module in addition to that, or is it replacing it? And if it's replacing it, how is it an improvement?
There's two different. So there is this module, that 9 through 11, is sexual harassment. So it's more specifically to sexual harassment. There is, in addition to that, an aspect of affirmative consent that is being emphasized in the 12th grade. So
it's no longer the 11th grade thing?
No, it's no longer. It's a new module.
Oh, okay. And in that case, how is the new sexual harassment module an improvement over the consent thing that we did in 11th grade last year?
Because I'm not entirely familiar with the consent thing you did last year, I can't really respond to that.
Oh, never mind then.
Is there a plan to implement this in any way with independent study students?
Yeah, all 5 sites will do it. All
Okay.
5 sites are required to do it.
Is there a collaboration with the Wellness Center and counseling staff on this sexual harassment prevention learning module?
Yes, so everyone will be invited to the training on April 19th. And because it is being implemented in classrooms, the collaboration came through social studies, because they're most likely going to have to implement it. But we tried to get feedback from many, and we're not done getting feedback. We've just sent it off to the principals for them. But part of it will be sort of, we'll reach out to counselors and wellness staff to let them know when it's happening. Everyone will have access to preview it also, so that we can make sure we also have supports available to students. One of the things about this, this training comes with what they call a trigger warning, that we have to inform students up front what we're talking about, and that might be difficult for some students and triggering for some students. So making sure that we have supports available to those students is going to be really important. And so also working with our counseling staff to let them know when. We don't have all the dates lined up yet, so once we know when all the dates of when it'll be implemented, working closely with our counseling staff so they know, and when it's going to be happening, because it's going to be important for them to be able to, be available and know what's occurring if students start coming into them.
And then, thank you. And the second question I had is about the adults in the district. I know that there's sexual harassment training through Keenan
Right.
for certificated and also classified.
Everybody.
Everybody. I know we got emails from Lars. Everyone needs to pass that or take it.
Yes. Everyone, yeah, and that's an online module. Several of us also attended recently an in-person sexual harassment prevention training that had some additional information, newly passed laws and stuff included in it. And the recommendation is that every 2 years you do it in person and not just online. That people tend to take more in person.
And so all adult staff in the district know that if there's something that happens that they feel uncomfortable about, they know where to go. Because that's not part of the Keenan thing. That's
It
just
is
our
part of
district.
the Keenan. You're supposed to be able to identify your Title IX coordinator
Oh,
as
okay.
part of the Keenan module. And we did send an email out recently. Wes and I sent out when I was named as a Title IX coordinator, we sent out a communication to let people know and to also launch the link on the website. And we have a lot of information on Title IX posted on our website, along with the link where people can file a complaint right there, should they choose to.
Good. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Can I comment? Just thank you to all the social studies teachers and your leadership around that, because you guys always pick up the slack in whatever's going on in the world and socially, and I know nobody paid you to do it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, and this is the school safety resolution.
Yes. Are we ready for that, President?
Yes, thank you.
I'll get used to it, President Harlander.
That's okay, I'll go by both.
So before you next is a discussion on the school safety resolution. As you've heard from the students regarding the walkout, I'm not sure if any of them had participated this last weekend, but I know that was also a large event for many in this community and across the nation, as well as an upcoming one on April 20th. I've included a number of resolutions here for the board's consideration. The first of which I believe is a template from the County Office of Education, relatively concise, followed by a more detailed sample from the California School Boards Association, which gets into specificity with regards to, these are all political documents as it relates to the safety and firearm-free schools. The third one is from Fairfax County. This is in Fairfax County where some of the tragedies occurred. And so there's a sample of what they passed, followed by one from Ross Valley. I was able to reach out to superintendents. Ross Valley said they did this about a little over 2 years ago on a resolution for firearm-free schools. You can see what they used. And then lastly, San Diego Unified. This one was not passed yet, but also in consideration for their school board. This was a more recent one to our neighbors to the south. They have some similarities as they have some recitation of facts, numbers, some of them which I know some of the board and I were startled too, like did we really have that many? So there's some facts that are included in here, and then certainly the urging to various extents with regards to our politicians in here and our desire that our schools be, gun-free. So I present that to the board here tonight for discussion. We are happy to take direction on this based upon where you would like staff to go.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
I'll ask what Violet thinks, but I know that Violet from Redwood wanted to read a statement. Would it make sense to read it first before we start discussion? Or would you like to wait a little bit, Violet? And so can you, just so long as you have a microphone, thank you.
So our leadership class wrote this, and bear with me because I'm actually really bad at reading aloud. It's all my accommodations to not do it, but I'm actually going to power through here. Okay, I didn't write this as well. But Dear TUHSD School Board, we appreciate your recent efforts to promote and discuss the importance of maintaining a safe campus environment. However, in light of recent events nationally and locally, there stands a need for definitive action. While we have tried to maintain a nonpartisan stance on gun control, we understand that it has become a controversial argument. We would like to focus on what we can do here at Redwood. Many students are under the possible under a possibly false impression that minimal consequences take place for horrific actions that have caused intense fear and panic. For instance, the Redwood High School has received numerous threats through messages scrawled on bathroom walls. Although students hear about these messages, the punishments given to the perpetrators are rarely shared. While we acknowledge the need for confidentiality in regards to names, addresses, and victims, the lack of information about repercussions acts as an incentive for the continuation of the threats. Many students will appreciate more transparency about what is being done in reaction to offenders. Others have called for more security measures and having teachers be more trained for emergency scenarios. Some students have felt unsafe under the care of their teachers during these emergency situations because they believe teachers are unequipped to properly handle these circumstances. A few students have even mentioned feeling more assured and confident that professional adults, even in an event of a crisis. We ask that teachers go through more mandatory staff development training to ensure the safety of students in and outside of the classroom. Also, we ask that the board emphasizes the importance of these days to ensure that students feel safe and secure during all situations. We have gathered several suggestions that will ensure safety and clarity within the Tamalpais Union High School District. First, students appreciate more instant communication during lockdowns via text. Information can be replayed quickly and accurately with little to no confusion. Students express that with more transparency, such as updates from the principal via student broadcasting, for example, Redwood TV, Pirate TV, and TAM News, they will feel assured that matters are being dealt with effectively, discouraging it to continue. Best regards, Redwood High School, ASB. Whew.
Thank you very much, Violet.
No idea what I just read.
So will you provide a copy of that for all of us? Thank you.
Oh, everyone?
No, you, yeah, run to the copy machine. No, just if you could provide a copy, thank you. So do you have any ideas how we should proceed? Do you suggest we discuss whether anyone has a favorite resolution or things they like or dislike?
Yeah,
'Cause
I
it'd
think that'd be a
nice
good
to
place
get
to
this-
start.
yeah.
I think from each of these respective districts, they had pertinence and relevance to them. Again, they vary in their level of detail, but they all, I think, present the same message. So I think the message is important, and where we end up, I think, is less important than the importance of the message of a resolution. So I would defer sort of where the board's conversation.
I'd like us to look at the CSBA resolution because I know that the folks there in the policy department who write this stuff are very not only knowledgeable, but have a much broader sense of how to pick those words. And I think the words that are collected here in terms of, Michael, you can probably speak to it better than I can, but it covers everything without the level of specificity that moves into sounding like it's an NRA argument in terms of how to correct legislation. I'm a little concerned about that. So I'd like us to adopt the language in the CSBA resolution.
For members of the public and others, CSBA is the California School Boards Association. They're the governing agency for school board members. It's a statewide organization, again, with a writing team, council, and so forth that does vet each of these documents. And they're great at providing templates for which districts can utilize as they see fit.
I also like the CSBA one the best of the ones that were presented on the agenda, partially because I felt it was less reactionary to the Parkland event and more comprehensive, covered all the bases without without feeling like it was reacting to one particular event. So I felt that made it a more compelling winner for our district. But I'm happy to hear what other people think about the others, or whether we need to have, I think the previous agenda there was a suggestion that we have a subcommittee work on the TAM Union resolution. I don't know if that was dropped and we're just doing it right here and now.
Well, Dr. Yoshihara and I had a discussion about that, and we decided we weren't thrilled with the idea of having a subcommittees because this is so important that it'd be good if we could come to resolution here. Why not do it? It was
Okay.
So we're open to that. But Michael,
So I'm going to slightly disagree with my esteemed colleagues here. The problem that I have with the CSB, let me look at it this way. I think we should focus on guns. Okay, I think that is clear, it's concise, it's the issue. Now, what we say in terms of the whereases to sort of lay the groundwork for it, I think there was a lot to be said. There were many things in the CSBA resolution which were helpful. But I think that the effectiveness of the CSBA resolution is reduced because it's too broad in scope. I don't think we need to address here bullying, harassment, discrimination, references to nurses and psychologists and et cetera, disciplinary and codes of conduct and student handbooks. It's too much. We lose the message. So I think we're at a flex point, I hope, in the national debate about gun violence. And that's where I think our focus needs to be, and not on what I think is important, but for purposes of this resolution, extraneous material in the CSBA resolution.
and I have to say I agree with that. Sometimes unintentionally that it dilutes the message, and it
Muddies the waters.
And it almost makes it appear like we're afraid to get out in front of and say this is what we're really focused on, and trying to avoid conflict. So I agree with Michael on that.
I mean, I feel like Michael took all the words out of my mouth. But I think the CSBA thing is almost a bow in the direction of the NRA, because it does take the focus, it puts the onus back onto the schools and takes it away from the guns. And I think, right now, at this point in time, at this point in history, guns are the issue. There is just no reason on earth why people should have guns where the bullets tumble after hitting the target. They're not useful for anything but killing people. And I think I like the scene, I took my English teacher's correcting pen, went after these things. I like the San Diego Unified one with a few alterations and the insertion of a paragraph from CSBA, and the paragraph from CSBA was, whereas gun violence in schools occurs in America with a frequency and severity that is unparalleled anyway in the world.
Yeah, I like that.
I like that one. And then on one of the others, where are we? Here we are. On the Fairfax County one, whereas the responsibility for preventing gun violence incidents cannot be relegated to school districts alone. And I think, I really think we should take the onus off of the school districts, off of the localities, and put it where it belongs, and that's with guns that kill, that are designed specifically for the purpose of killing people and killing lots of people all at once.
So where should we start the discussion? Should we first agree that, or decide whether or not we agree with Chuck that the basis will be primarily the San Diego Unified template, and then look at if we agree, the majority agrees with adding the other two whereases? Is anyone strongly leaning on a different template or example? And I'm sorry, Chuck, I got the one from the CSBA because I had noticed that one, but you also cited another reference, and I lost track of which one it was.
The seventh whereas.
The last whereas in
On
the
Fairfax,
County
okay.
resolution.
Okay, thank you. Oh, I got it, the school, okay.
I mean, I still, I like the CSBA one. I can see that it muddies the waters. I'm more inclined to strike things from the CSBA one to de-muddy the waters a little bit and make it look more like the San Diego one. I mean, I hear what other board members are saying, and I think that's probably right. We want to keep it as clear as possible, but the San Diego one is, it's, you know, we got a whole paragraph for Columbine and Sandy Hook, and I don't know. I still like the CSBA. A lot of what the content of the CSBA is directly talks about gun control. I didn't read it as an NRA, you know.
Maybe student trustees? I don't know if President Harlander wants to hear from.
Yes, I
Any
would
of-
love to hear the student trustees. If you have these in front of you, you do, okay? Because I was going to say, I have some hard copies here if you'd like to borrow them while you're looking.
So we're choosing one, and are we allowed to like pull from? Or I'm a little confused.
This was just used as
Discussion.
a tool for us
Okay.
to,
For
because we'll
samples.
have one
Okay.
our own, and it's sure nice when you get one that's pretty darn close, and then maybe do a hybrid, and that's what we're talking. So it's all open. Whatever, which one do you find one that you like in particular, or
So would it be possible to pull from a
yes,
few different ones?
whatever,
Okay.
yes.
Well, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I do agree with Miss Owens that the San Diego one, where it has the paragraph about like Columbine and Sandy Hook, because it mentions the specific like 200, it seems like it will become like, I don't want to say irrelevant, but like a step down from that in years to come, because there will be more than 200 school shootings since Sandy Hook. Also, it does seem kind of reactionary rather than like proactive. So if there was like a hybrid between San Diego and the CSBA, I think that would be ideal rather than basing it solely off of one or the other.
That's a really good point. Thank you. Any other student trustees? And you can chime in later if you think of something. Just
I agree with Jacob, and I also agree with what other people have been saying, that I feel like it's very important to really focus on guns, so that we're not trying to cover too many issues at once, because then none of them will feel as prevalent as just doing one. And I think definitely focusing on guns is the most important right now, and especially for what we're trying to do with this resolution.
so I'm trying to think of how we move forward. I'm going to hand it to Michael because you look like you have an idea.
Well, I think what's interesting is that the San Diego is just how these resolutions are labeled, and the San Diego one is labeled in the matter of support for federal gun control action. And the CSBA one is labeled as school safety resolution. So, I mean, right, who's against school safety, right? But I think that in my mind, we need to decide what we want the primary area of focus to be. And if the primary area of focus is gun control, then I think we ought to say it. And I don't think, Jacob, your point was extremely well taken and really depressing. The idea that that's going to be out of, that's going to be out, it will be surpassed in deadliness, right, by other murders that are committed elsewhere. Though there's undoubtedly truth to what you say, it's extremely depressing. But I think that we're passing this now. It's a snapshot in time, if you will. And I think what that demonstrates is that it's based on, right, the same thing has been going on, right? Columbine was in 1999, Sandy Hook was in 2012, Parkland is in 2017, and God knows how many there have been, in the interim, other, additional ones. 2018. 16 this year alone, right? So we could keep, right, we're always going to be out of date at some point.
The Washington Post debunked that. It's up to 6. but it's not 16. I'll recheck my. Yeah.
Right, but I think if we're focused on, if we as a board are focused on gun control, right, then that will help us in terms of, or if we're focused on school safety, whatever it is, that'll help us, I think, in terms of, steering one way or another. And I also think that we cannot use language, I don't, we had the President of the United States who gave an inaugural address that all he talked about was carnage, right? It was the most outrageous inaugural address I've heard in my lifetime. When this is all about, this is the carnage we should be concerned about, right? So if I think that's why this is where we ought to be focused. This is murder, right? This is killing. Frankly, it's being aided, abetted by our politicians who haven't done anything for decades. And I think that's what we ought to focus on. I mean, I'm sorry, I've just had enough of this already. We're public officials. I think we have a responsibility. We're in county, for God's sakes.
No, I have to agree with you, Michael, and that's how it was first raised, that do we want to get out in front of this instead of having another board policy? Do we really want to make a strong statement to our, we are elected officials, and we need to get out in front of this. And
So I'm hearing what is being said. I'm also thinking, okay, so we have had bomb threats at several of ours. Do we need a separate resolution for bomb threats, or do we need something that's more general like this about safety? It includes gun control. It includes bombs. We've had several things to be scared of this year alone. So maybe we need something more general. I don't know.
I want to make a statement to our, representatives that nothing has been done about gun control. And so I still lean toward not being general. We have board policies on other safety issues. This is something that I just don't see a way of getting around it, and that's just the way I look at it. That.
Well, I want to send a strong message too. I'm just trying to.
I mean, we could do
marry
another
the
one
two.
for bombs and these other things. I just would really like to have one that's really focused on gun control.
Barbara and I have spent decades asking students, who is your audience? And I think we should ask ourselves that. And I think our audience are the people in power, in the legislatures, who can make these changes. I don't think our audience is, students at Drake, Redwood, Tamascal, and San Andreas who might, phone in a bomb threat for this one. I think this is about guns designed to kill people by the hundreds. And I think we ought to stick with that if we want to address issues within our schools. Then I think that's for another day and another resolution. And while I'm at it, even the San Diego one tones down the language. The senseless and tragic mass shootings. These shootings instead of murders. The Columbine. They did use massacre for Sandy Hook, which I would take out anyway, because I think you just start with Columbine. But, I wouldn't say shooting, I'd say mass murder, because that's what it is. So, even this is a little toned down from what is, what is really happening out there. I could have a shooting I could shoot clay pigeons up at my house. That's a shooting. But what went on in Parkland is a mass murder, and we've had 200 of them.
I think I'm comfortable with going with more of the San Diego model, as long as I would like that. Whereas since Columbine, Chuck just mentioned it, I was going to say it too. If we just start with Columbine and then say there've been 200, it's. Unfortunately, Jacob is right. I mean, I hope he's not, but that could change. I'm okay with having it be more focused, if that's what we're deciding this resolution is, mostly focused on gun control.
I also like that you suggested changing shooting to mass murder.
So I have those notes so far. I have the two insertions offered by Member Ford. The one whereas from CSBA, gun violence in schools occurs in America with a frequency and severity that is unparalleled anywhere in the world. And then the whereas from the Fairfax, whereas the responsibility for preventing gun violence incidents cannot be relegated to school districts alone. And then a revision on the whereas in San Diego, whereas since Columbine High School shooting in 1999, there have been more than 200 school mass murders nationwide, shattering communities and leaving emotional scars. That's just what I have for my notes. It's more a summary than anything else for the
I
president.
think too, if we scratch senseless and tragic in the first whereas and just have mass shootings,
Okay.
I think that's stronger.
Yeah, I think it's stronger too.
Take the modifier out and just have mass shootings.
Okay. I made a note.
Murders on the first one?
I like that you're using that instead of the word murder, because it's often that people are shot and don't die.
Yeah.
But we do, I'd use murder down below, just to work,
Right.
play them both.
I think it's an important piece. Do I have to stand up there if I talk to you guys?
Sure.
Sure do.
Say it, Greg.
It goes along with all that you guys are talking about. Obviously, school safety is important to me. It's what I've done in this district for 17 years, and it's what I've put my life into is school safety. I think that goes along with addressing the gun issues, which is really important, is talking about the prevention and the education piece. Guns are scary to a lot of people. They're even scary if you don't know anything about them. So there's things you can talk about in prevention of people using them that have no idea what they're about. So I think a little focus on education and prevention, along with clearly stating that they're extremely horrible and there's no need for them on any school campus. That's just what I see.
Thank you for that public comment. Thank you.
Could you say that last thing,
Oh,
Greg?
you know,
I missed it.
the
Your
board
last-
member just noted that you didn't
Your last
announce
sentence.
yourself. Didn't announce yourself. No, she's
You
right.
guys are gonna get used
She's
to
right.
seeing me up here.
You need it for the record.
My name's Greg Lockenar. I work at San Andreas High School.
Thank
I'm
you.
a campus staff assistant. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And why don't you stay there? I think Chuck Ford has a question for you.
Chuck,
The last sentence you said, loudly, to my hearing aids.
I don't recollect what I said, Chuck.
We'll play the video.
Play the video. You know, I think another thing,
Chuck, I think
one thing I wanted to point out too, that we're very keyed on school safety, and school safety is really important. I think it's even more important that the people in my job as campus supervisors have their feet on the ground outside, looking at things outside the buildings. It's really important. There's 3 of us on all the big sites, 1 flying solo at San Andreas. There's a lot of weight on our shoulders, especially around this discussion. Sorry, rough day at work today. This actually came up at work today, so I'm a little on edge about the discussion. But we need to be out there. Our eyes are what look for the guns and look for the people that are bringing them and that are doing the bad. So get us out there. Put us on the ground. Our boots should be on the ground. Our butts should not be in seats.
Thank you very much.
I think it is worth pointing out, in all its fear and paranoia, that school shootings are rare.
They're rare, Chuck, but no one heard of Columbine until there was a school
Yeah.
shooting. And no one heard of Lakeland, Florida until there was a school shooting. And no one heard of Sandy Hook until there was a school shooting.
Yeah.
I don't want anyone to know Larkspur for a school shooting. I want them to know Larkspur for the town.
Bill,
Okay, let's.
after Columbine, Bill Levinson, I was talking with Bill Levinson, he had been there, and he said, it's just like Redwood. And then, if you watched on TV, the aerial photos of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, and you looked at that neighborhood, it's like, is that Redwood and Riviera Circle? That was my first impression. So it is
Okay.
rare, but it can happen.
So board members, student trustees, any other input?
I mean, I'd like to see it again with all the additions.
It's not an action item, so yes, it's a discussion.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I might take a look at the CSBA one again and make sure it's little nuggets. If there are some in there, they could be included too.
I'll bring back.
So we could bring it back
I'll
for
bring
a
it back,
second reading, yeah.
What was suggested and the board can go from there. So
Right, yeah, bring it back for a second reading, and then meanwhile, the board, at the second reading, if you see other nuggets you want added, we can add
Yeah.
it, and then we'll be ready to go.
Next board meeting is a week away.
Do your homework.
Yeah, so with any luck, can we make it an action item next time, so we have the option to approve it there? And then if we want to add a nugget, we could add it as an action item, and then it'll be done. It'd be really nice to get this done.
We will.
Well, as
It
a-
seems pretty manageable. There's not a lot of changes, so.
Right. No, thank you. And thank you, board members. That went more smoothly than I thought, because I...
Got a great facilitator over there, President. Shall I continue, or?
I
Yeah.
just want
Go
to
ahead.
say thank you to the board for making this resolution and actually taking steps towards this issue. It's wonderful.
Thank you.
It's important. Moving on.
Yes.
Resolution on fair funding. This is another discussion on full and fair funding of California public schools. You do have a sample from CSBA in this one, as well as some background on it. I'm not aware of other samples. Essentially, the premise with regards to this stems from this current governor, when LCFF was implemented a number of years ago, had created essentially what he called a target for schools. And it was really set on 08 numbers, 08 standards. And the community had cautioned him that once that target was reached, people may feel like, well, schools are now adequately funded. And so there was concern that there was this perception that now schools are great, even though we were operating on 08 standards, and at that point in time, we're well below the national average. And so I think the spirit behind this is to urge our legislatures to acknowledge this and to move the target to something more in line, if anything, of where California once was, but at least closer to the national average. We are below the national average, as well as a lot of other averages. So that's the spirit of this, and I know this was brought up, and so it's for the board's conversation and discussion tonight. I'll leave it at that.
At Legislative Action Day, where we were prepared to present this resolution in part to Mark Levine, our assemblyman, and Mike McGuire, I think what's important to note is that this attempt is a floor, and it was communicated overall as a ceiling. We're not there in any shape or form. We are 41st instead of 7th, where we were in the 70s. So this material is to give us something to let our legislators know, stay on it. There's AB 2808, which is one of the pieces of legislation that is going to move in terms of, I'm not precise about it, but increasing the basic grant money. And we are pressing on our legislators, even though one can argue, well, we're not, we're community funded.
Right.
That's not the point. We're trying to use these resolutions to get everybody on board in any direction possible that's going to improve our source of revenue via any means in terms of legislation. So I hope we can see clear through this language to participate with lots of other districts in the state of California who have adopted this resolution to press on our legislators who are here and those who have any intention of coming to us, because we were reminded of the fact that our legislators are typically with us for a very short period of time. And this kind of material is the stuff that lasts, so that new people who come into these offices understand the importance of increasing this revenue so that we get we've got to get some relief here.
Laura?
Well, I'm very glad this is on the agenda, and I think especially in light of this district's fiscal situation, it's important to endorse and approve a resolution like this, to show that we're trying to bump up our revenue stream in every way that we can.
Can you remind us, because I know because we are basic aid, we're not as, and because of the demographics at our school, we don't qualify for as much of LCFF, but can you comment on that, please, and remind us of I know it's a small percentage, but like Trustee Anderson was saying, every bit counts.
Yeah.
And plus, making the statement to the legislature is important regardless.
Yes, certainly. So as a community-funded district, of which we are one, about 10% of districts are community-funded, generally those surrounded by higher property values. If you buy into the notion that a rising tide, raises all ships, this is essentially where community-funded districts do support the notion that, if our neighbors to the north, have more dollars, then we all benefit from that as well. And that's our SF Squared Schools for Sound Finance, which is our sort of advocacy group for community-funded districts, supports this as well in regards to a benefit for all schools, and we should be a part of that. So, yeah, absolutely. We don't experience a direct benefit. If anything, we are benefiting from the fact that our students are receiving amounts closer to the national average than what's set by the LCFF formula. And as Trustee Owen saying, the base grant, the target, is well below the national average. It's recited in here as well.
But it's a solidarity move. Where
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good way to put it. Yeah.
And we support that. Yeah, absolutely.
So I have a question and a comment.
Absolutely.
So I think I'm happy to, and I think we should pass a resolution like this. My question is regarding the whereas that appears at the top of the second page, where it talks about, the resolution already described how we're below, what various national averages are. But here then it uses, it says it translates into 3,462, I guess, less per student when adjusted for California being a high-cost state. So we're a large state, right? We have costs, and, the cost in, I don't know what they're referring to, right? The costs in certain areas of the state are not what they are in, it's like a friend of mine likes to call it Marin County premium for living here, right? So I just, that seems like a rhetorical device to me, and I'm a little concerned that it's kind of overstepping it, but I'd like to know what you think about that.
I think the purpose of putting a dollar amount, whether it's the first, the second, or both, is to put on notice the legislature in terms of fiscally what this translates to as a per dollar amount. I haven't done the math, but we have roughly 6.3 million students when we calculate revenue. So if you were to do 6.3 million times this, it gives you some idea of the magnitude of a budget increase that it's asking. So I think the purpose is to show sort of the magnitude of which we need to move in the billions of dollars.
Yeah, no, I get that, and it's, I guess maybe it's the first portion of it which I'm okay with.
Right, that's why I said whether you use one or both.
Schools, right, it's the second portion which, where they talk about adjusted for California being a high-cost state.
Yeah.
But we're a pretty large state, and I guess what I'm trying to say is, I don't know, maybe they just take an average of cost of living sort of statewide, but it just strikes me that that's kind of a reach logically, but.
Yeah, if it was written by, Michael Kirst or others who've been involved in LCFF, they have certainly talked about what they call localization multipliers. This looks like more of a state multiplier. It has sort of the idea that some locations, as you know, are more affordable than others, and so therefore they wanted to acknowledge that as well. That let's just say we use $10,000. $10,000 per student in California doesn't equate to the same purchasing power, if you will, as $10,000 in, you name it, Florida or something. So I think they're trying to.
No, I understand that, but my point is that $10,000, right, doesn't in Marin County also doesn't have the same purchasing power
Yes.
as $10,000 per student in Merced.
Right.
And that's why I mean this struck me as being a little bit overreaching. But if you think it's valid, sort of a statistical way of looking at it, I'm not wed to it. But
I'm supportive of underscoring the importance of more funding to schools, and if this helps by showing how far away we are, then certainly.
Okay. So then I had a comment, which is there's a couple of paragraphs down below, just a couple of paragraphs that go on that refer to this Robles-Wong case versus the state of California. Right. So in this particular case, being the wonk that I am, I went back and read the Court of Appeal.
I think it's LAUSD that come out of it.
I read the Court of Appeal opinion, right, which is currently the law, and I will tell you, it's a good opinion, right? What they were trying to do was to read into the state constitution, in two particular constitutional provisions, but frankly, it's just not there. These are constitutional provisions that were written in 1879, and they're trying to read into it a kind of a guarantee of, quality education.
Well, adequacy of school funding, right? I mean, it's essentially.
No. They were talking about. What the appellants were arguing was that the California Constitution guarantees not just a right to access to education, which it does, but to a sort of minimal quality, certain level of quality of education. Okay. And whether that's right or whether that's wrong in terms of public policy, that's one thing. But just in terms of what the Constitution says, it doesn't say it. In my mind, the decision that the Court of Appeal made was correct. And so, and I think, frankly, the argument of the losing party in that case, I think, really was just not logical and was not legally supported. So, if the citizens of the state of California want to amend the California Constitution, or the legislature wants to do it, there's plenty of ways to do that. But it's just not what the document says. And so, I have a problem. With referring to that and impliedly sort of supporting an interpretation of the Constitution, which I just don't think is there.
So a suggestion maybe to strike that particular reference.
I would strike those two paragraphs, and I would focus on the inadequacy of funding.
That one and the one subsequent to it, the two court ones, when you said two.
Those are the same. Right. So Robles is the decision that was made at the
right, and then the following one
at the Court of Appeal level, and then the following one was then the loser appealed to the California Supreme Court.
So they're tied together.
Which declined to accept it.
Okay.
And there's a reason why they declined, because this Constitution doesn't say what the appellants wanted it to say. So I just think it. Anyway, that's what I would do.
Okay.
I'm okay with the rest of the resolution. I have a problem with those two paragraphs.
It doesn't take teeth out of the resolution?
I don't think it does at all.
Okay.
Others, I see nods.
I clearly didn't read the.
It's okay. You didn't read the Robles versus Wong decision?
So I'm
I'll send it to you later.
But you being the attorney, in concept, I do get very annoyed. In my field, it's more, when people make references and it's doesn't even help the issue, and it kind of almost misrepresents. So I'm going to defer to your judgment, and I appreciate that you caught that, because that is a pet peeve of mine, when people cite references for the sake of having a reference and it's not even applicable necessarily. So thank you for catching that.
All right.
So that one will come back next week too?
And that's the plan? With
Very good,
those
thank you.
two
This was very,
removed?
very helpful. Yeah, and thank you,
All right.
everybody.
I think I'm still up. We got a couple quick, hopefully, board policies. 3100 is a second read. Apologize, I don't have my folder in front of me.
We have
I need to
online
pull that
agenda.
Oh, thank you. CSBA online agenda. This is a service agreement. So this is Agenda Online, which you all use. They have upgraded their systems. Thank you to my executive assistant, Mary, who's done a lot of homework on this. Basically, you see the language there. The cost for the current year is $2,750. they have, how did we write this? Offering a promotional rate next year of the same amount, and then a free year in 1920, who basically renew for a 2-year, and then in the subsequent year, we can essentially decide whether we want to go for the high tier or stick with the middle tier. We think there's a low tier, but we think it'd be either the middle or the high, depending on what the board feels with regards to their service. I think the high tier offers video recording. So that's something for the board to consider, whether we want to see if CSBA utilizes the video recording option or not, but it is free in 1920. And next year, that promotional will apply for the top tier. Is that my understanding? So, Barbara, go ahead.
I have a big note here to ask Mary what she thinks of Agenda Online. I know we've had some bumps with it. You're the one that has
She does.
a lot
She
more
uses it
interface
far
with
more
it.
than.
It works great for me. And they improved it. They say they've improved it. We haven't seen it yet, but I could go with them. This seems like a good option. You know, we can try it out, and then we're not obligated to stick with it.
And they've been receptive to your questions, and because I know it's gone down a couple times.
Whenever I ask them questions, they respond right away.
Okay.
Barbara?
I have a comment that, I mean, after the freebie part is over, it goes up 3 times. I mean, it's almost 3 times more than this figure.
Is
$6,000.
that what it was?
It does, but we don't really need that level. We could go with the medium level, which would be just about a little bit more than what we pay now.
Okay, good information.
She did look at that, yeah. She
Thank
said.
you.
So I think the idea was the high one includes the video service. So if we try that out and we say, well, you know, we don't care for it, then we could go to the medium one, and the cost will be closer to that $27.50. Yes.
When you say video service, are they videoing the presentations from the screen? I mean, that's
Yeah.
they don't. It's.
Mary, do you know much? We can find
is it
out
like
more.
a web, like a seems a little odd. Yeah,
I have a feeling it won't really work for us.
no, I just don't want to get locked into anything.
We're not obligated.
Yeah. Not obligated.
I made sure I asked them that.
And we can clarify what the video service is too with the board.
Do we need to ask for public comment on this one?
Yeah.
Thank you, former president. She always does this for me, especially when I start getting tired. Do we have any public comment on this item? Jacob?
I have a quick question. Does it make sense to upgrade the agenda if we're in deficit?
That's a really good point.
We don't have a choice if we're gonna stick with the agenda online. They
Oh, okay.
improved it, and it's really, but we're not getting charged any more than we are being charged this year.
Oh, okay.
But they do that like an upgrade.
It's like a promotion of sorts.
They're trying to entice us to do that, and that's what Barbara was bringing up. We don't want to fall for it. But we're
Yeah.
trying to get a feel,
Yeah.
because when we first transitioned to it, I know there was a concern, but you've worked out all the bugs, and it does afford the public. It's easier to get the information. They can archive material better, like former meetings.
Yes, and then the promotional thing, we're already using it, but I think they're trying to get other districts, they're trying to get more people to use.
But we're not going to do the video. I mean, that's what I'm saying. We just, the video is the promotion too, though, right?
Yeah, it's just a new feature that's.
Okay,
offered,
okay,
but
okay.
New feature.
we don't have to use it.
I got it. Okay.
So it's an action item.
I move that we approve the contract for services with CSBA for Agenda Online for 2018-19 and 2019-20.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Sorry, I know Laura was thinking.
I was saying preferential.
Preferential.
Oh, see, I'm so sorry, student trustees. When she was sitting here, she
I'm
always
always smiling,
remembered.
that's okay.
Yeah, so I need to put a little note right here, especially in the second half when I start getting tired. But see, you help me out though, Jacob. You just jump in, so
Okay.
always do that. please both you. So, and I know you really want to now because we're at the board policies.
So, board policy, second read of 3100. This is coming back as a, on the considerations, because we did remove language. I'm trying to read here. There was a paragraph that related to basic aid districts that isn't relevant to us, so I struck that. And then something about reserve balance. Again, I don't have that in front of me, but
Yeah.
happy to answer questions.
David, there's still a reference that needs to be deleted.
Is there still? Oh, okay.
Sorry.
That's okay.
So, I'm looking at the red line of the BP.
Okay.
Board policy, for those of you who don't speak acronym. And it's on not the last page, but, well, it's the page where at the top it says the board delegates authority. What is that? That's the
Page 4.
page 4. And if you look under, it's got in the middle of the page, it says reserve balance.
Is there? Oh, right there. Okay.
And that's Site 5 CCR, California Code of Regulations 15450, is in fact a 3%. That's what it refers to.
Yeah, but let me read this. The board shall include minimum reserve balance for economic reserves that is consistent with the percentage of amount specified. Okay, but that is required by law.
But that's the 3%, though. I
Okay.
thought the whole purpose of revisiting this was that we're not adopting a policy. We have a policy that we've decided upon collectively as a board of targeting a reserve at approximately 17%. And now now the proposal here is to adopt a policy that says we're going to have 3%.
Yeah. Oh, okay, so I know what you're saying. I'll go back and look. So be careful. So this is the reserve, as you know, the 3% for economic uncertainties. If the board has certainly said in public the desire, I'm going to use the word desire, to be at a 17%. If you are thinking, and I'm reading into this, that the board wants to formally adopt what I've been called in other places, or has been called a board reserve, it's called a board reserve, that's usually a resolution level action, in which case then it does go into language. And I can work with Terry on that, but the board hasn't adopted a resolution yet, and that allows it to, we can create then an item called board reserve. And that may be what you're thinking in here. This is more towards the statutory amounts.
Yeah, I understand. It's just not, I understand, but
Yeah.
but that reference is to 3%, right?
Yes.
And we've decided as a board that 3% is insufficient for a community-funded district like ours. It's not. I understand that we have to comply with state law,
Yeah.
which says we have to have at least 3%, right? But if there's no explanation, it sounds like this is inconsistent with really where we want to be.
So if I can suggest, so something along the lines of the board desires or would like to target a reserve level of 17%? How would you see that phrase, short of, like I said, if it's...
Well, you can say the board recognizes that, here we are drafting as a committee, this is, what it's going to look like, right? So, but I mean, something, the board recognizes the state mandated or state required minimum reserve of 3% as specified in whatever, but
Yeah.
period, as a community funded district, we have a target.
Okay.
We believe that 3% is not sufficient
Yeah.
for a reserve, and we've targeted.
Yeah, I get it. So
whatever,
put some kind of language in there as per
right.
GFOA and some of
Right.
the stuff that the
Right.
county has recommended. Okay. Got it.
Question?
Yeah, go ahead.
The particulars above that, 1 through 5.
Uh-huh.
Is this, I know was out before, and I didn't really notice, as I'm noticing now. Is this material typical now in resolutions that any board might see? Or is these references to the government accounting standards so specific in this language? Is there a purpose for it to be this specific?
It is as per GASB 54 now. Yes, that's the law now. It used to be, I think it probably, to be honest, came out after Dodd-Frank, sort of in that time frame, with regards to, and this is what I was talking with, I think, to Michael about these different ways you can designate. So yes, this is as per GASB 54 now, and we have to, in the I think it's in the adopted budget where you'll see it, but, and again, I can verify with Terry, these have been around for a number of years now. These actual nomenclature is exactly as what they mean in there. So, yeah.
And you'll change the revision date from January 2018 to?
Yeah,
probably-
to whenever, yes, we'll bring that back, and I will put language, work with Mary on page 4 after that reserve item, tying in some of the conversations with county office, GFOA, and the 17% board desire to target. I'll play with it, and then bring it back.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Anything else before we move on to the next one? Okay.
All right, the next one is another policy, 5131.6. What do we say here? Labeled as a new policy when in fact, okay, so we noticed that we label it when it was brought back as new when it isn't new. So really the policy itself hasn't changed. It was the verbiage. So I said, we need to be sort of transparent. Let's not treat it as such. So it's really the same. There was an existing policy, so the red line shows that policy and the replacement. So it's a first read. It'll come back for a second read. If the board has any questions. Yeah. So when we brought this before, we wrote it as new, and we said, no, we found it on there. So if there are no questions, we will bring it back next week.
I have one question, and I'm trying to scroll up to see what heading it's under, but
Okay.
it has to do with the professional development and training for school
Okay.
staff.
All right. May I ask Dr. Topia to help? I know she works on a lot of these too. We'll see what it looks like.
I have to see what it's saying we're going to do. Oh,
You're
prevent.
on the red
Okay.
line or the clean or?
Yeah, I think it's red line. Might be green line.
It's all good.
Okay, I'm fine with that. Thank you. I just didn't see what header it was under. I retract my question. I don't have
Good.
one.
Okay.
Any other comments on this? Any public comment on this resolution or board policy, I mean? So you'll come back with this for a
Yes.
for a vote?
For a
Okay,
second
thank you.
read. All right, there were a couple items pulled off consent. So I
Yes,
guess we're ready.
so we'll first go to item 17C.
That was me. I
Oops.
pulled it. This is the Mustang.
Yeah. Oh,
I love
okay.
that Mustang, and it's a simple question. Hoping we get $30,000 to $35,000 for that, which is what it.
It appraised from 30 to 32.
30 to 32. Hopefully, we get a bidding war. And does that money go into the general fund? Then my question is, I'm trying to find more money. Who gets that money?
We were targeting an administrator slush fund, but
Aha.
no, we
He's
will.
kidding. For all those who are watching.
We are
on-
definitely kidding. Given I'm on television, we haven't made a decision, and I haven't talked to David about it. Quite frankly, I would like to see the money flow back to the school,
To the site.
to the program. Yeah, to
Yeah.
TAM High School. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
That
Yeah,
makes
that,
sense.
I mean, that would be my preference if I could make the decision independently. It'd flow back to the school.
Because the vehicle was donated, right? So
Vehicle was
this is
donated, and the class, under the direction of Lisa Miller, restored it. We have one offer on the car already, but the process, as you know, is that you need to pass a resolution this evening, which gives us permission to advertise it. We must run an advertisement for a minimum of 2 weeks, and then once we, and hopefully there'll be more than one person who's interested, and then we're bound to sell it to the highest bidder, provided that we can, the bidder has to prove qualifications, that they actually have the money. So, pretty easy process, but it begins tonight by approval of this resolution.
And
We
are
can't
there
sell it without that.
any other jalopies at TAM that we could sell? No, I know.
Yeah, no.
It's
Hasn't
a
it
beautiful
been
car.
dismantled and rebuilt like 10 times, or it's?
I didn't. When I
Yeah.
came to the district, it had already been completed, but they did a beautiful
I
job.
thought they also took it apart
yeah.
again and then put it back.
They may. I don't know.
This is
but,
brainstorming. I'm just trying to
Okay.
come up with other.
Good. So do we have any other questions about Resolution 17-12? Any public comment? You're wondering what it is?
No, well, I've gotten the gist of it from the website. I feel like it's a good idea to use this money for something good for the school.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say.
I agree. Thank you. Can I have a motion for passing resolution number 17-12?
I move to adopt Resolution 1712 to allow the sale of a refurbished red 1965 Ford Mustang.
Do I have a second?
Second it.
All those in favor?
Roll call.
Oh, roll call. Yeah. Yeah, you'll be there first. So.
Aye.
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 Aye. Thank you, it passed.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Great, so now we'll move to, I hope I got this right,
I
17.
just want to announce
Oops.
that I bought a lotto ticket. I'm winning tonight.
17E, approve new course of study for TV and media production, 1-4.
My question, Tara, is are there costs associated with this adoption? And would the teacher, would it require then, if this teacher were removed from the regular fine arts duties that this teacher has, does that mean we have to hire more?
So it's an elective course, so the students in this course would likely, not, I don't know there would be an overall FTE increase. They would be taking this instead of something else. It's sort of targeted, I think, towards a lot of those drama kids. That we used to have something called Drama 3-4 Film Focus, and it's the same teacher. And so this is more geared towards, the production side of things. There's some level of equipment that's already in existence for them to use, so there's not a large amount of cost associated with getting this up and running. And the idea is to have something similar to what is available at both Drake and TAM through AIM and Drake through ComicAd.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Maddie, do you have any comment on this one? Anybody in the public concerned about this one? Can I have a motion, please?
I move we approve the new course of study for TV and media production 1-4.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, very good. Now we're down to 17F, approve new course of study for ethnic studies.
I wanted to comment about it because I know you in particular have worked on ethnic studies in this district for a long time. And I also know that prior to your coming here, particularly at Redwood, there were take that back. 2 schools where I was associated, Redwood and TAM. We did offer ethnic studies. When I'm delighted to see that the curriculum's been revised, and that it, I hope, will become a course of study that will become popular enough that we can then begin to communicate, or we'll communicate our equity issues around that.
Thank you, yeah.
And I'm saying that also because yesterday, forgot to mention that I attended a meeting, not a forum, but it was like a workshop at Embassy Suites, where the group that provided the study about how out of sync we are in equity. We are high-performing county, but when it comes to equity, we're at the bottom. And this group did present their findings at a more detailed level, which I think we all need to hear and see, and I'm hoping we can get that projected for the county, because it's in these courses, this type of a course, that we can begin to actively address these issues much earlier on. So I want to thank you for all that work, and I
You're
hope we
welcome.
can adopt it easily.
Thank you. Yeah, just a quick note, we are working on a second semester that would be, this is sort of an overview, and the second semester would be looking at it through a systems lens, where they would be looking at inequities in various systems in the United States, which we haven't gotten too far on, but we're working on it.
Is this an elective, or would it count as a I guess like history
It's an elective.
slash.
It would be, it's an elective, and just a reminder that the state is requiring that by the year 1920, that all school districts offer an ethnic studies course of study. It will not be required for students to take it, but it will be required that all school districts, high school districts offer it.
Very good. Can I have a motion?
I have a comment.
You have a comment?
Yeah. So I'm going to vote in favor of it, but I have a reservation about the course of study. So so I try to write some things down so I don't put my foot in my mouth, but I may do that anyway. So I believe in the goal of equity. I think it's beneficial to offer coursework and model behaviors that are inclusive and that offer different intellectual paths, including paths for growth from which minorities are frequently excluded. I think there is value to listening to different stories. As a sidelight, I watched the TED Talk that JC highlighted in his email. I found it, the woman, the Nigerian novelist, I found very, very interesting. Anyway, I think there's value to listening to different stories and indeed to empower people to learn from and tell stories that are closer and more relevant to their life experiences. And I understand that perspectives matter, including perspectives born of race, ethnicity, and gender. And I think that the district the size of ours should offer a range of courses, and that ethnic studies certainly fits within the range of academic subjects that should be offered. And frankly, it's one of our LCAP goals, and it's certainly tied into equity, so that makes a lot of sense. Here's my concern. The course of study, as written, adopts critical race theory as the construct through which all work is done in the class, and in fact many of the texts are chosen for study are written by adherents to critical race theory. What I don't see in the course of study is any provision for any critical analysis of critical race theory. Rather, it appears to be accepted as sort of the prism at the inception of the course outwork through which everything else is going to be analyzed. I think that is inconsistent with the goal of teaching our students to think critically. It is in fact the essential building block for the course, but there's no indication that adoption of critical race theory as that building block will itself be subjected to critical analysis. For example, I see nothing in the syllabus that discusses the basic of classical liberalism or the idea of individual rights of expression or freedom of speech or association, and comparing them to theories of group rights that are inherent in critical race theory. To be clear, I'm not rejecting many of the observations of critical race theorists, including the centrality of race to many social issues, but where is this critical analysis? I'm very skeptical, and this is not in the syllabus, but I'm very skeptical when I hear you use the expressions his truth or her truth as if there cannot be, under any circumstances, an objective truth. There can be many perspectives and opinions about an issue, and some are better informed and some are better reasoned than others. But by rendering the concept of, quote, truth as subjective, it devalues reason and critical thinking. And frankly, and I think ironically, it plays into the hand of our current president, who simply rejects facts he doesn't like and that run counter to his narrative as fake news. He doesn't say he disagrees, he simply dismisses the validity of statements made by anyone whom he perceives that oppose him politically, effectively claiming a monopoly on truth. I'm also concerned, and I know this from personal experience, that strident adherence to critical race theory has from time to time led to harmful anti-democratic conduct, particularly on college campuses, as manifested by frequently expressed hostility to free speech, or refusal to take seriously, or frankly to even listen to someone who is not born with the particular ethnic, racial, or gender attributes deemed acceptable under the orthodoxy. I favor robust debate and open discussion, and I'm concerned that while approaching the course from the critical race theory will be instructive and eye-opening for students, I also believe that it carries the risk of without the critical analysis of it, it carries the risk of becoming, over time, an intolerant orthodoxy, as has manifested itself repeatedly on college campuses. Sorry.
No, that's very.
I think I'd like to
no,
respond, and that is that I believe that the course of study actually says quite straightforwardly that the goal is for students to develop their own sociological lens, which in and of itself suggests critical analysis of any theory put forth.
Yeah, but I think, Tara, if you look at where it says stage 2 evidence on page 3, right? I mean, the way I read this, right, you know, you're talking success criteria. Students can identify the tenets of critical race theory, that it can identify the tenets of CRT and key scholars, et cetera, right? But there's nothing in here that talks about an analysis of whether critical race theory is the best or the most appropriate, or why critical race theory is a better way of looking at it than other ways of looking at this. And it just adopts it as what I think is the foundation block. Now, once you've done that, I think then there's a lot of critical analysis that you're expecting the students to do. But it's the adoption of this theory. Well, I don't want to keep repeating it, but that's my problem. I think that this is foundation without sort of critical analysis. I think it's inconsistent with kind of the level of critical thinking that we expect of our students. But having said all that, I told you I'm going to vote for this because I think it's important to have ethnic studies programs.
Any student comment? I guess you're the only student, but Maddie, do you have any question or?
I agree with a fair amount of points that Trustee Futterman has made. I think it's always a good idea to have debate in class and definitely look at anything with a critical eye. But I also think this is a very important class to have, and I'm definitely for it. Yeah, I think for this class, it would be helpful to maybe start out with talking about looking at, like, doing it more how you have put it, where it's really just looking at looking at history through these different lenses, but then after having done that, then sort of analyzing, just analyzing all like these different lenses. And I think it's also important, going back to sort of what is factual, looking at how we know how history is written and who writes history, and how we know what actually is factual, because who we actually have data from when regarding history. So looking at questioning history that we've accepted as truth, where we're getting that information from, and looking at where we're getting other truth from, and really analyzing which of those are more factual and just which people's histories have been written out, and we have no information, so it's hard to know if that's true or not.
Well said, thank you. Do you want to respond to?
No.
Okay. Well, I remember, gosh, when was it? I want to say it was 2 years ago, and it was one of the first times I met with Betty Hodges, and she was lamenting that, you know, how wonderful it would be if we had this course. And I remember calling you and saying, it's coming, and it was so nice to tell her that, and here it is. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
Very, very much. I look forward to hearing more as you move forward. And
A quick response to Maddie. About 25 years ago, we had here speaking to students Gary Nash, who is Mr. Nash, the physics teacher here at Redwood, his dad. And he wrote the national standards for history, for American history, and came under intense attack by Dick Cheney's wife. But one thing he said to the students that has really stuck with me, quoting Plato, "He who has the power tells the stories."
Oh, wow.
So Gary Nash was my professor at UCLA. He was, which I have explained to Mr. Nash here. He was, and I took a class in pre-Revolutionary War, or pre-War of Independence, if you will, American history. But what stuck with me, which actually can be dry, I think, but Gary Nash's lectures on the slave trade were unbelievable and absolutely unforgettable. He was clearly one of the best professors that I had, and he took a lot. And I remember when he stepped forward to work on the standards, and he took. It was very controversial. It was extremely controversial, and he really stepped into the arena, and deserves a lot of admiration for that.
Nice having him in my classroom for an hour and a half.
I bet it was.
He was a little better. He was a little better at it than I was. Just saying.
Also, just sort of adding to that, the history teacher that I've had for the past 2 years, Paul Griffo, I think has done a really good job. We've had lots of discussions looking at when sort of words that are synonymous but have different connotations are used. So when town is used versus when village is used, and when house is used versus when hut is used. And really looking at history as who is telling us this history and who is writing it. And then also, I think he does a good job just telling us what is going on in other parts of the world and what happens leading up to the more Eurocentric history that is the core curriculum.
It makes me want to go back to school the more I hear when we have the presentations of the curriculum and new curriculum comes out. Whenever I hear the students talk, high school's sure a lot better than when I was in high school. So thank you.
Thank you for working on this, and I move that we approve the new course of study for ethnic studies as presented.
I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're down to the last one, which is approve the MOU between Oakland Unified School District and Tamalpais Union High School District.
I pulled this one. I was intrigued. This is the first I've seen of something like this where another school district is paying us $45,500 for a student of theirs to attend our CEC at Tamascal, correct?
Yep. Yes, this is the first student from outside the district that will be attending. We had 2 different districts contact us. The other student was just not quite a right fit for CS for this. And at this time, there was some room. The CEC has graduated, I believe, 3 students this year. So there's a little bit of room. And one of our sort of hopes for the CEC would be that it could eventually actually be a money generator. And so here it is, generating some money.
So I was wondering if we had, I love the idea of a money generator. If we have protocols, so you said 3 graduated. I know the max is 12, correct? So what happens if we have a district student who needs these CEC services or is coming back from a non-public school placement and we've already maxed out because we've got an MOU with a different district?
So part of the deliberation that Amira and the team went through was just that, like who's coming in, who do we know that's already placed, and who would likely be a fit for this, which, so and they were very deliberate in selecting this particular student as being a fit, and considering all of the other variables and knowing who else within the CEC is likely to also graduate, that there'll be some play. But it was definitely taken into consideration that we make sure we have room for our own students. We would not turn our own students away in order to make money.
Okay.
You ready?
Any other questions? I was just happy to see that we're able to generate some more funds. It's great, and that the word's getting out that this is a good program for certain individuals.
Yeah, there's other, other districts have contacted us and are looking to do, I think everybody's in a similar place with non-public school placements getting so outrageously expensive that they're looking for alternatives. So now that this is up and running, I know we're hearing from a lot of districts wanting to know how this is working and trying to replicate something similar.
Would you like to make a motion?
I would like to move that we approve the MOU between Oakland Unified School District and the Tamalpais Union High School District for the 17-18 school year. Do I need to put the dollar? No, I don't. That's fine.
Do you have a second?
Second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Meeting adjourned. Oops, sorry, no, it's not.
I'll talk to you about it afterwards.
Okay, meeting adjourned.